we are.
All right, we are live. Good evening, everyone. This is Ashley Tullis, but if you're here, you probably already knew who you were going to be hanging out with. I own and operate Atomic Properties Group, mostly here in Dripping Springs. And if you're like me, you got some mail recently, you opened it up, and the county thinks we're all basically millionaires at this point, which feels good for a second until we see that tax obligation tied with it. So I just wanted to take some time this evening and address your questions on how do we go and protest those property taxes. Now, I'm a real estate agent, so I am not your expert for that, but I did bring an expert tonight. I'm pleased to announce my dear friend, Chase McRoberts of Home Tax Shield is joining us. Thank you so much for hanging out and for being willing to have this conversation with me every year around property taxes.
Thank you for having me. It's good to reconnect about this as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, at one point I read a stat that said like 80-something% of people don't protest. Is that still true?
Yeah. It holds true really consistently, even though, there's businesses out there that do this and homeowners that do this. But yeah, pretty incredible.
That is pretty incredible. So with that, as we go through tonight, guys, I'm going to be interviewing Chase. I'm going to be asking him a lot of questions. But if you have a specific question that you want to ask, be sure to put them in the comments, and we'll make sure we get those addressed. Chase has already promised me if he doesn't know the answer offhand, which I feel like he will because he is the expert at this. But if he doesn't know it offhand, we promise to find you the answer and we'll get that back to you. All right, next up, what is something about the protest process that surprises most people?
So these are the questions you're going to throw at me. And guys, I have no idea what's going to be thrown at me tonight. So I think what surprises people is in some ways how easy it can be, and in other ways how difficult it can be. It seems easy up front, and it seems like it's something that people can just do on their own, and you can. I want everybody to know this is not for me to talk about Home Tax Shield. This is about me to educate you and know that Home Tax Shield's a resource if we can be. But at the end of the day, it can be easy, and you can get lucky sometimes. And then there can be times where you get into the process and you just don't know how to navigate it. And it can be very challenging. And so, especially if you go in front of the ARB, which is the Appraisal Review Board, or you really start to fight some of the nuances. Land can be difficult to fight. There's some pieces in this puzzle that aren't always that easy. So that I think is like any business, right? I mean, Ashley, there's nuances to what you do and nuances to what we do. And that's why an expert is really important to have in your corner.
Absolutely. What separates Home Tax Shield from the other property protest companies? Now, we already know, we're already have a little inkling. Let's just get a company to handle this instead of going down there and just fighting the fight for ourselves. What makes Home Tax Shield different?
Yeah, I think what we've brought to the table is entirely different from what you're seeing out there. And really what it is that we are using technology to help us and to scale what we're doing. And a lot of people hear that and they go, that sounds great, but like, where's the human element? Well, the interesting part about this is that the human element is actually what makes this extremely expensive for homeowners. And so, yes, we have a human team, but what we've been able to do is build technology that allows us to scale fighting your property taxes, but also to provide data into that process that allows us to be more efficient and effective. And that's why our ability to be effective in this whole process is really what sets the company apart. And our results have told that story versus us just telling you this story. It's really about, as they say, right, the proof's in the pudding kind of thing. And so that's what sets us apart. And we talked about this right before we got on the call. You're not going to see our name out on every billboard. You're not going to see us use a huge spend for marketing. And the reason why is because we don't want to spend the money like that. We want to put the money into helping you protest your taxes. And I think that's the real difference. So don't expect a letter in the mail. Don't expect a billboard, and nothing against what those folks are doing. It's just, those are some differentiators of what we're focused on.
Absolutely. What does a successful protest actually look like for a homeowner?
Well, this is a multi-pronged question. So bear with me for a minute.
Absolutely.
Because it can look a couple of different ways. And so you have to separate, essentially, I would say, two different types of protests: an investor protest and a homeowner with exemptions protest, right? And let's start with the exemption, because I'm sure that the folks that are tuning in tonight, that's probably the majority of them, is they own their home, they're homeowners, this is their homestead, and they're really focused on lowering their tax liability. As I get it, I'm in the same boat as you all are, by the way, in Austin. So what that looks like is, for one, filing a protest. Whether you hire a company or you don't, this is your right as a Texan to protest your taxes, and do that. Do it on your own. Do it with somebody else. Just do it, is what I would say. So that's first and foremost. Secondarily, I would say, if you are able to lower, there's two valuations on your home. There's a taxable valuation and there's an appraised valuation. The tax valuation actually is the one that you're actually going to pay your property taxes on. The appraised valuation is what they believe that your home is actually worth in the market. Remember, though, your home has about 14 valuations on it. There's a lot of valuations. So this is just what the taxing entity in the state, or your county rather, believes that your home is worth. What they will do, and I'm going to use some numbers here just for sake of talking, but say they have you at $1 million today, and that's what you're being taxed at. Well, but they say your value is worth 1.5. Well, remember, in Texas, they can raise you 10% every year. And if they do that, they're going to 10% you every year until they get to the 1.5. So when you're fighting your property taxes this year, you're doing two things. You're either fighting what you're being taxed at, which is what we all want to actually lower. And then the other piece is the actual appraised value. So it's successful protests can be either lowering the amount that you're going to pay and what your property is being taxed at. And I would say I feel more successful when that happens, right? Because that's money in my pocket, or money that's not out of my pocket. But the other piece is being successful in lowering the actual appraised value. I think that's very important that people lose sight of, because you want to continue to keep that as low as you possibly can too. Now, let's flip over to the investor side. There is no homestead cap. There is no exemptions cap at that point. And so really what you're being taxed at and what your home is appraised at are going to be one and the same. That's going to be the same number. So a successful protest there is going to be lowering that valuation to what would be deemed as fair, is what I would say you're really after. It's not about getting the lowest number. I mean, as a homeowner in Texas, I know that's many of our sentiment, right? Is get it to the lowest we possibly can. But really it's about being fair. And I think if you go in with that mentality and that outcome in mind, you won't be as disappointed.
Has the process changed at all over the last few years, or is it steady Eddie?
Relatively the same. I mean, the one thing that I would say is the differentiator this year is you have to reapply for your homestead exemption every year. So keep in mind, the county will notify you if they have taken it off, but there's rules around this where they want you to continue to apply every year. And the reason why is there were many people that had exemptions that just stayed on properties for perpetuity, potentially, when they potentially live somewhere else, or they had an over 65 exemption that they shouldn't have had, or whatever the situation was. And so that's the big change this year.
And
but as far as the protesting itself, that portion has not changed.
And that homestead exemption is every single year. Do I have that correct?
That's right. Yeah. You got to, now there might be times where they don't notify you that it's been taken off. And then in that situation, you want to just verify and make sure everything looks good. But as long as it's on there, then you're good. Yeah.
How does somebody go about verifying? Do they just check county records, call the county? What's the best way to double check and verify?
You can do all of that. I mean, I don't ever recommend calling, because then at that point, like, nothing's in writing. I mean, making sure that you verify on your own, I think, is important. There's generally a email that you can email for most of the counties, but really the best thing to do is they're going to notify you. They can't not notify you about this. So make sure that, your mail is not being forwarded somewhere else, or that you have the right mailing address, especially if you have investment properties and you've moved. Make sure and update that mailing address. So, but they're going to notify you by mail.
Okay. And to kind of revisit, the cap or maximum increase is 10% if you have your homestead exemption in place.
That is right.
If you're an investor, you do not get to take advantage of that 10% cap.
That's right. There is no cap at all. Yeah, if you're an investor.
And
or it doesn't even have to be an investment. It could be I guess a second home would be considered an investment in many people's minds, but it's just any property you own that is not your homestead.
Okay. So your property that you buy for your kiddo to go to college, and that kiddo's buddies is renting out some rooms, they're trying to learn how to live on their own. That's still considered an investment property, even though your family member lives in it, right?
That's right. I mean, the only way that it would not be potentially is if that family member was on the deed, and then therefore they would be on record with the county, and then that person would be able to claim homestead. But yes, I mean, if they are not on that property, then yes, it's going to be considered an investment or a second.
So you kind of touched on this a minute ago. If my tax bill is only going to go up 10%, it's only 10%. I mean, my groceries have gone up 200%, so it's only 10%. Should I still be protesting?
Well, let me ask you, is your groceries because of inflation, or is it because your son's growing? I think it's probably the latter. Or a combo of both.
Yeah, fair enough.
No, I'm kidding. But in all truthfulness, the thing about it is that, keep in mind, they 10% you this year, and then that's your baseline next year. So yes, it only went up 10%, but now you have a compounding the next year, they're going to probably take you up 10. So if you could even knock it down 2%, 4%, whatever it is this year, now that's your new baseline. And then they 10% you again, you actually are in a better position next year than you would have been. So this goes back to what I call the compound effect, really. I mean, it's the snowball, the compound, whatever you want to say about this. It's about resetting your baseline.
So something that I see whenever I'm evaluating properties for my clients, or I'm going on an interview that somebody wants to list their home, the first stop I make is to county data, and I look at what those values are. And what always boggles my mind, and I don't know if this is a question you can answer or just a soapbox I get on, if we're a non-disclosure state, how is the county sometimes just so spot on with that information? How do they know?
Yeah, well, we actually teach a CE course for real estate folks that is directly around how CMAs or comparative market analysis are not data that you should use to fight your property taxes. And so, and it's a Texas Real Estate Commission approved course. And I will tell you, the reason why this is such a big deal is because we are a non-disclosure, but how do you think they get the data? Through folks taking in data.
Oh, and so we're modeling on ourselves.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, and the thing is that many times that data actually does not support a lower valuation. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say this is if you really dive into the data and you understand what your lot size is, and you understand what your makeup of your home is, meaning what's the construction type, how many beds, how many baths, square footage. There's a lot of nuance to it. How many garages do you have? It's all of these things combined together that make a valuation or an appraised valuation that the county uses. And so there's class codes associated with that. There's just many variables here. And so when you just look at comps or sold comparables that have been in the MLS, the multiple listing service, which is what realtors use. I know I'm using some industry jargon, so I want to make sure that everybody's able to follow. It doesn't necessarily equate apples to apples, and that's the challenge, is that you might be actually comparing apples and oranges, and then you're not helping your case. You're actually giving them data that supports or says that you really should be valued at a higher rate. And so be cautious that they may use that next year against you. So yeah, I really encourage folks not to take that information in.
Can you talk for a minute on property classes and the assignment of property classes? And I'm talking really slowly through it because I don't understand it completely.
Yeah, it's pretty complex, to be truthful, and there can be anomalies around it. And there's a whole, I don't have it in front of me, but there are, it's on the county website, but there's different grades, and it tells you what certain grades are, but then some of it's a little vague. And to be quite candid, I mean, I had a situation where there were two houses that were built across the street from me, and my house is older. I don't live in a new house, but there were houses across the street that had two lots. The same person owned both lots. One house was a spec home and one was a custom. And the spec house, that individual that built the custom built the spec, and she always planned to sell the spec house. Well, and she did. But when it came down to the county appraising it, they actually had a higher class code on the spec house, which a spec house, just for sake of talking here, is a house that is built and is not custom. It's a house that just is finished. It was a nice home, don't get me wrong, but it was meant to just be sold. And the custom home was far superior in finish out and customization, so should carry a higher value. Well, the class codes were flopped where the spec had a higher class code than the custom. So ultimately they paid about $5,000 more a year in taxes. What they did is they actually went into the county tax office, and we helped them with this too, but we went in and we showed that the custom home had a lower class code, and that the spec had a higher one, and they ended up lowering the spec house down to the same one as the custom home, and to match the neighborhood. So this was an anomaly in the neighborhood where one house was higher, and you can do that if you go in as a consumer or as a homeowner, and you can actually see the data, which you can pull. This is all public data, and see it. You can go in there and leverage those class codes. It's difficult to do. You can do it though if you know how.
And so the county has, like, on their website is where you would do that research. And yeah. Do they give you like the definitions of them? Like, where is the county where we need to go get that crash course on it and double check things?
I don't know that I would say crash course. They're not going to just spell it out for you. But what I would say, you're giving them a lot of credit to say that. But what I would say is it will at least give you an idea. Like, it will give you the 1,000-foot overview to know what they mean, and tell you what they all are. But as far as to define them, it's going to give you, if I remember correctly, that's like a 3, 4, maybe 5 word definition. It's not defined underneath what they actually are. So, you're going to get a very high overview. That's about it. And if you're going to fight the taxes on your own, I would say go in and ask them what these are, but then be prepared that you have other data to back it up if you don't like the answer. Really, it's a data game at the end of the day.
Does alternative construction play into comparables on properties like log cabin, for example?
Interesting. Possibly. I would say, I mean, if you're comparing a log cabin that then is compared to a property that is not a log cabin and basically everything else is apples to apples, I would say probably not. I mean, it might have some bearing, but probably not from the tax. Yeah, not from the county, probably.
Why does the county, specifically Hayes County, think that our dirt is worth so much money all of a sudden, Chase?
Demand. It's so beautiful in Hayes County. I mean, come on, that's a loaded question. No, it really is just demand. I mean, at the end of the day, and listen, I'm facing the same thing at my house. The dirt is what's gone up more than anything. And they can't, the improvements have not gone up as much as the demand of the dirt. And the more that we have development and we have we become more dense, right? The land is worth more. And you also have to remember we can't build very easily on every piece of dirt here because of the topography. And so there's some of that bleeds into this, but it's the easiest answer truly is just demand.
Okay.
And I recognize a lot of people look up and they go, well, our market doesn't feel the same right now. Right? Like our real estate market has changed over the last couple of years. It has, but it hasn't gone down really. I mean, yes, we've realigned a little bit. And so you'll see that there's a little bit of a realignment in some of the values, like the dirt, my personal house, the dirt went up dramatically. They went up $400,000 on the dirt in my house, but they brought the improvement down a little bit. So that's the realignment in the market versus what's really going on from the tax side.
Okay.
It's hard to make sense of it, Ashley, to be truthful, and keep in mind the county's behind 2 years on how they value our properties.
We got our first question, so I'm going to put that here. Can you talk a bit about proposal deadline, best place to protest, in person or online, and best items to take? Well, Corey, the first thing I'm going to tell you is forget all that and just hire Home Tax Shield so your life is so much easier. But I'll let the professional give you a little bit of guidance and ideas on what you should do.
Yeah, Corey, great question. And the deadline is generally May 15th or 30 days after you get your notice in the mail. So if for whatever reason the county's behind, so you should have received it April 15th, basically. And many people have already received them, but if you haven't received it yet, then go on the county website, look up your address. The best place to protest is, if you're going to do it on your own, go to the county website. You'll set up an account. You do have to have the physical paper that they mail to you because there's a little pin on there, pin code, and you'll use that. I would do it online. I would not do it in person. And obviously, I mean, you can protest with an organization like Home Tax Shield if you want to have leverage and have somebody take care of it for you. And we'll talk a little bit later about what it costs, but it's relatively inexpensive. I mean, we're talking $15 your first year and $30 every year after that. So it's really relatively inexpensive, but we'll talk further about that in a minute.
Chase, while you're on that topic, something just came to mind. Will you mention how the way you submit your protest is like how you protest? And I don't know if I'm being super clear with that. What I'm saying is, so in Corey's case, if Corey decides he wants to do the protest, once he submits saying, I, Corey, am going to do the protest, he has to follow through the protest. You can't change your mind and say, never mind, I have this company helping me. Or if a company starts to help you, like Home Tax Shield, you can't then go, oh, I'm going to pivot to this company. Do I have that right? Like how you start and how you finish.
You have that absolutely correct, and great memory, because you and I don't talk about this day in and day out. So great memory on that. But yes, no, that is 100% true. But here's the other caveat to this. If you did it yourself last year, it doesn't mean that necessarily they're going to know that you're going to do it this year, right? So you have to reapply every year. The other thing, if you used a company last year and you want to switch companies, you need to do that before the deadline. And I would give yourself a couple of days before the deadline. So May 13th at the latest. But we start to find that when we get closer to the deadline, there are companies that if somebody had used them prior, they've already started filing, which really isn't the process. So you want to get in front of it if you want to switch companies. But you're right. If you start the process yourself and then you want to hire somebody. It just doesn't work like that. You've declared that you're going to be the one that's going to protest, and you get one shot per year. So you hire a company, that's your shot for that year.
Awesome. Corey says thanks. You're
You bet.
welcome. Glad we could help. Next question coming in from Megan.
Yeah.
Demand is what drives improvements. Looking at our improvements, and it has gone up almost 75,000. However, we have done no improvements.
Yeah.
That resonates with me, Megan. My dirt looks the same as it did last year.
Yep. And obviously demand it drives improvements right in the general area. And so with that being said, they might have thought that you were undervalued last year. That's the other thing. So, and keep in mind, there's two fights that you can take when you're protesting your property taxes. One is what they call the equity fight, and the other one is the sales fight. So equity is what generally is most effective. So sales is based off of what other sales have been in the area, or maybe what you paid for it. And I'll say the last statement I made about what you paid for it with an asterisk, because they do not have to technically take your number that you paid for it. So you bought $1 million property, and the person you bought it from embezzled money and needed out of it, and they took 500,000 because they just needed it out. I'm making that up, obviously, as a dramatic story, but the property isn't necessarily worth 500,000. It might be worth 900,000, right? From an appraisal perspective. So point being is, don't think they're going to knock your value down to 500. The other piece is the equity fight, and it's not about how much equity you have in your home. It's about things being equitable. And so meaning your neighbors live there 30 years and their home is valued at 500, but you live across the street and you bought your house 2 years ago. Now you're at $1 million. Well, why is theirs at 500? Because they've lived there 30 years and they've only 10%ed themselves until they got to 500,000, and they bought it back when it was 200,000, or whatever the situation is. You find this a lot in Central Austin. You find this a lot in areas. I mean, the dripping there's people that have lived out there a long time, right? I mean, I know there's a lot of new builds, but there are sections where people have lived. And so you will find that things can be quite inequitable when you look in a given neighborhood. So especially with folks that have purchased in the last, I'd say, handful of years, you might actually have a better fight. But again, this is really about consistency. Megan, is the key. When I say you should do this every year, it's not because I'm in this business. It is because I firmly believe it is our right to do this as a Texan. And I will tell you, the way I have seen people be most successful, even if you get a really good year and you get your number down, do it the next year, because you might get it down even more. Mm-hmm. And that compound over time will save you a lot of money. So without knowing your specific situation and what it looks like around you and all of that, it's hard to give you a good gauge. But I would just say that if it's gone up, you might have a real opportunity to lower it some, or at least meet halfway in the middle somewhere.
Awesome. Megan also says thank you, and she has another question, but I'm going to jump to that in a minute. Okay. Nicole had two questions, so I'm going to pop those both up on the screen. First one, any comparison to other companies, more savings, higher fees? Can you talk? Let's just get into the money piece, because you're a company. You guys have to make money too for your services, right?
Yeah.
What do you charge? Hit us with it.
We do. And I would say that we really are in this to do what's right. And so and I'll compare to the two that are mentioned here. But here's one thing that we do is, especially on homes that you have exemptions, if we lower your appraised value, but it doesn't lower your tax liability, because remember that example I gave earlier, you are taxed at $1 million, but they have you appraised at 1.5. So maybe I get your appraised down to 1.2, which is a huge win for you, by the way, because the next year, they might go up 10%, but that baseline's still lower of where they're going to go to. And maybe I get what you're paying down to $950. But remember, the homestead exemption is worth $100,000. So technically, I didn't lower what you're going to pay out that year. But now next year, you're starting at $950 as your baseline that they're going to move you up to 10%. So that's a win for you versus, because next year, if they go up 10%, that's going to put you, and I might be doing my math wrong, but $1,045,000 versus if you stayed at the million, you'd go to 1.1, right? So point is that's a win, but we're not going to charge you a success fee on that because you had that exemption and it was worth more in that situation, but you still were successful. So to protest your taxes using Ashley's link, it's a $15 sign-up fee. That ensures that we do the protest, we create the sales grids, we do the equity grids, we put all that data together that we're going to go in and fight at the county with on your behalf. Then, and you can upload documents as well to our system if you would like to, and we will use those too in addition to what we prepare. But it won't supplement what we prepare for you. Then, on the flip side of that, there is a 30% success fee. So if I save you on $100, if I save you $30, you're going to pay $10 of that, right? So did I make that simple, Ashley? You had a really good way of.
I want to interject so bad. I'm like chomping at the bit. Here's how I love to explain it. For every $100 you no longer give to the county, you're going to give Home Tax Shield $30.
$30. There you go. Perfect.
Yes. And I'm posting my referral link here.
Yep.
That first year sign up is $15. And then every year after that, it's $30 to check it out. There's also a really cool thing where Home Tax Shield has said, Ashley, thank you for sharing this. We'll give you a little kickback. And I said, that's awesome. And then they said, what do you think about giving it to charity? And I went, wait a minute, what charity are we talking about here? And this company is so locally owned that all of those little kickbacks that would come my way are actually going to Foster Village here in Dripping Springs. So your dollars don't go in my pocket. Home Tax Shield is willing to give me those, but we're in agreement here. Let's keep it local and do some good with it. So you can actually feel like really good about that $30 check that you make every year, like just to see. And for every $100 that doesn't go to the county, 30 goes to Home Tax Shield. And in Chase's example, even though they will be successful in lowering that appraised value, that tax value is where the checkbook actually occurs. So even though they get that down, you're not sending any money to the county with that number, even though it helps you, you don't owe them anything.
That's right. Now, if we lower it beyond the exemption, then obviously that 30% would kick in. And to answer the question fully, I think it was Nicole, right, that asked that?
She did, yes. Any comparison? Here we go.
So Ownwell and Texas Pro Tax are, Ownwell's a big organization. You're going to see lots of billboards. I get stuff in the mail too. And I would just say that what we have done is different. We've put our money into the technology. We are not heavy in personnel. We're actually quite a small team, but we do thousands of properties across the state, one of the largest in the state. And Texas Pro Tax is one that is local. They're heavy on the personnel side. And so the fees are more. We've actually found statistically on most properties where homeowners have come over to us that we have been able to be more successful for them. This is some years we're going to be more successful. Other years we may not. It really depends on the situation. But we give it our all, and we do send in a human to the county to do this on our behalf after we've prepared all of the data. So, and I will tell you, like in Travis County, Hayes County, some of these bigger counties around Austin, Williamson, et cetera, we're going to go in with thousands of properties. Here's what I'll tell you generally happens. They cut deals a lot of times. So we'll go in and they'll say, we'll give 10% off all those houses. Okay, great. That sounds great, but for some houses, that's not enough, right? So we'll go back and we'll evaluate before we actually say that is a fair deal for everybody, because our thing is all about being fair. So when maybe they get it down that 10%, but we say, nope, this house really should be 30. We're going to go back to them and negotiate again. So know that we really do have your back. We think that this is really, really important. And we're all Texans, we're all local, and we just feel really strongly about making sure it's fair for all of us. And we all use the service too. So
Nicole had another question.
yeah.
It seems like maybe she's on the fence thinking, well, maybe I'll give it a go on my own. Are there appointments you have to go to if you do it yourself?
Yeah,
Can
there
you-
are. Yeah, generally speaking, I mean, unless they do it informally and you agree on the informal number immediately, then yeah, you're going to have to go down there. You might have to go to the ARB and you're going to have to prepare all the data. And I'll tell you, it's time consuming. I've done it before the folks that are part of this organization started what we're doing. I've been involved in this over 6 years. But 10, 15 years ago, I used to do this every year on my own, and it is a lot of work. It would take me all day sometimes. So I'd have to take the day off, go down there, basically camp out, take a sack lunch kind of thing. I mean, you got to be prepared. So,
and who knows what kind of mood you're going to catch these folks in, maybe you're the last appointment of the day and they want to go home and get to their families. And I recognize they're just doing their jobs. So they could be very generous in that moment or very ungenerous. Who knows? Megan, who we were talking about improvements with earlier, wanted to know if we currently use you all, do you automatically pick the best option to protest?
I'm assuming you're referring to either the valuation or the appraised value versus what you're paying taxes on. I'm going to go with that's probably what you're talking about. We're automatically going to do both. So the best option for you is to protest everything in full, and we're going to do that. We're not going to pick and choose. We're going to do both for you.
My dear friend Grant. He's one of the most can-do guys I think I've ever met. There's no challenge this man won't meet head on, including his property taxes. What is the best evidence to take to the hearing? I already told him I'd be doing it in person again.
Yeah. Well, good luck, Grant. Take everything you can. Do your research, pull data around you. It's all public data. You can literally download the records yourself if you want. It's hard to sort through, but you can, and I would do that. I would be careful about giving them any comparables in your neighborhood. I think that that's really one of the misnomers in this business. But really the biggest deal is about the equity fight and preparing data around that to be able to do it.
So to kind of expand on that, if I may, Chase, my suggestion, my playbook to Grant would be, don't ask me for sales data because we're a non-disclosure state and I'm no snitch. Okay. I don't want to go snitch to the county, but what you can do, Grant, is you can get into hazecad.org, go look at all your neighbors up and down the street, and then go use the county's data to fight your fight against them.
Yep. Reverse engineering their data can be the key. That's really what we do. And it's our background is actually in commercial property tax protesting. And the reason why we started this company is because in commercial, you would fight buildings that are all across town because keep in mind, they're not in neighborhoods, right? Mm-hmm. So we basically took that and engineered it in the residential side. And if I take a 3-bedroom, 2-bath property that's 1,500 square feet on a 0.3 acre lot, and I look at every single house that fits that criteria, I can find, is there any anomaly in that county? And if there is, and we can do this, like spit it out in seconds with our process. If it is, boom, those are the ones that we're going in and using. And I think that that's the key that you have to take away here, Grant. But also too, does your house have roof issues? Do you have foundation issues? Do you have improvement issues to your property? That's something that can help you.
I think in the past, comparing increases with square footage, that's a great way to do it. Go find a neighboring property with pretty darn close square footage, who's not paying as much in taxes, and point to that one. But also be prepared that maybe one example won't be enough. So like really stack your deck heavily for that. Nicole had one more question.
Before we go to her, so real quick, okay. Ashley, sorry, I just wanted to mention this to Grant. If you do that, you are not hurting your neighbors by leveraging their data to help you. by the way. So
thank you for mentioning that.
there's actually a rule about that in the tax code. So, like I mentioned with my neighbors and the class codes earlier, that did not hurt anybody else in the neighborhood. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for mentioning that. That's a really, really important point. Okay. Do we still protest on a newly purchased house with a recent appraisal? What if we filed 100% disabled veteran exemption within Hayes?
Always protest, always protest, always protest. The 3 years that are most crucial are the first 3 years that you own the home. Why? Because the first year they're probably behind and they're valuing you on a previous history of that home, and or generally they've raised you because they think they now know what your house sold for. Maybe it is public data. I mean, they can go to Zillow, right? Zillow posts a lot of this data. Homes.com posts a lot of this data, or they post the last published price that it was listed at. So oftentimes you're right in your comment earlier, Ashley, they're very close. Well, a lot of houses may trade. They're watching. Maybe they trade for 10% this last year under what they were last published for, or try to be sold for, listed for, right? So you have to kind of look at that stuff. And then the next year is they're going to probably go up. And it's just crucial to set your baseline over the first 3 years that you own a home. So yes, it doesn't matter your exemptions, Nicole. You absolutely should be protesting your property taxes. And really, again, whether you do it with us or you do it on your own, just do it. That's my not to take Nike's slogan, but you just got to do it. You just got to go for it.
Just do it. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I'm going to post my referral link one more time for you guys as well. If you have other questions, this would be the time to get them in. Again, Chase, I just wanted to say thank you so much for hanging out with us for a little bit once a year to get this important message out. What question should I have asked you that I didn't?
You know what? You just stole mine. That's my favorite question to ask when I'm talking to people. And here I am stumped. I think you've covered a lot. And I think what you covered was organic and fun and conversational. And no surprise, it's Ashley Tullis, y'all. I mean, this is how it does it. So no, I think we've covered a lot. And I will tell you, I am available and I will make myself available like I have in years past. If there's something that I can do to support or help, please reach out. The other thing I will mention, when you go to Ashley's link, you're going to notice at the bottom right corner, there's a chat feature. Everybody on our team is on there and will help you and answer questions for you that we possibly can. Even to the CEO of the company, like there's nobody above what we're doing here. Like we are all heavily invested in making sure that we help, and know that we're actually grounded in the backyard of Hayes County. So it's where our CEO lives, is in Hayes County. So anyway, we're here with you guys, and we understand exactly what you're going through, and we want to help in any way that we possibly can. And if we're not the right fit for you, like I said, just go and protest. That's the key here. It's about making sure that you had the information at your fingertips.
Absolutely. 2 more questions. They're very similar. Love Nicole's. Do you have any like HEB combo loco specials going on?
I love a combo loco, right? You get the tortillas and all the things with it.
Yes.
I mean, who doesn't love a taco? Anyway, no, we don't. We really skinnied down our fees to where they are the lowest that we possibly can be to operate and do what we're doing. And so, no, there is not a combo loco.
All right. And one last one from Corey. Best way to engage with you, Chase, for your services, and do you still have time? I want to give a crack at this if I can answer on your behalf. Please. And you can let me know if I'm wrong, because this is what I'm telling people. Yes, you still have time if you haven't already filled out that form and submitted, because the way you start is the way you have to finish. You get one shot at it. You have until May 15th in Hayes County to do that, but maybe don't wait until May 15th. And the best way to engage with Chase and Home Tax Shield is by using my referral link. I actually track this data for the people who have used my referral link, and I just want to share a quick success. I'm going to click over in to another tab, and I'll put this information in my recap where you'll get a link to the video to rewatch, and you'll have all of these questions and answers as well. So in client referrals, there's been a lifetime reduction. So people who have entered in partnership with Home Tax Shield with this referral link of $11 million, $11,691,999. That's the reduction in valuations that we've seen by folks who have said, I heard about Home Tax Shield through Ashley. I want to sign right up. This translates into an actual savings. So money that the county no longer gets from homeowners, just shy of $100,000. Isn't that cool?
Yeah. And I think what's neat about this, just for everybody to know, is that's the level of transparency that our company has, both with you. You will have that data as well on any property you sign up, as well as we do this with our partners like Ashley. And like Ashley said, I mean, this is a partnership where we generally pay a referral fee in partnerships, but Ashley's chosen to send this directly to charity. And so my point is that we want to make sure that our partners know what we're doing for their clients and folks that they are engaged with and that they know. Because if it doesn't work out well, why would you send anybody to us? And so
100%.
that's the point of the transparency, is really to make sure that we're all above board and doing what we say we're going to do.
Awesome. Well, Chase, thank you again for hanging out. Guys, if you have questions to follow up, you're welcome to email me, ashley@ashleytullis.com. Again, you're going to get the recap webinar. I appreciate everyone's time this evening. I know we're all busy, and taking the almost hour out of a busy spring evening is much, much appreciated. We will see you next year. And I want to tell you to get out there and fight often, but you only get to do it one time. So get out there and fight one time. All right.
Thank
Y'all
you,
be well.
Ashley.
Thank you,
Thank
Chase.
you, everybody, for joining.
Good night.